My father once told me that something could frighten a person so badly that they could lose their voice. They would open their mouth and nothing would come out. No scream, no yell, no cry for help, nothing. No matter how desperately they needed another human being to save them, their voice would fail. For some reason, this idea always stuck with me, and I often wondered to myself, what would have to occur to produce such a profound reaction? Can something be that frightening? And recently I found the answer for myself. Every major city will have them. The city of New York is no exception. In fact, if you go looking for them, you might be surprised to find that there are dozens of secret bars, and each one of them will claim to be the most authentic, the most secret. Most of them were once speakeasies during Prohibition, places of illicit pleasure that operated under the cover of night and behind locked doors. This is what started my obsession, and may have cost me my sanity. The year was 2009.
I had turned 21 earlier that year, and had already done all the new freedoms that come with that age. I found myself in a tedious bank job, digitizing old financial documents, and the novelty of being an adult had quickly faded into boredom. My work hours, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., were the only good thing about it. They were perfect for a single guy in his early 20s, allowing me to take a quick walk from the downtown business district to the historic Greenwich Village, land of old bars and quiet cafes. I spent a lot of time there, but even that began to get boring. Really boring.
So I began to research secret bars. I found a few right away, and most of them were just as boring as the regular ones. One in particular, called the Gilded Lily, was located down a narrow staircase, accessible only through a tiny door behind a bookstore. Once I got down there, though, it was just another bar. The clientele were a bit more pretentious, but in the end, it was the same thing. A bar, booze, people, and the usual wretched signage. One night, at home in my tiny apartment, I was using my search engine of choice. Now remember, this was 2009, and searching for more secrets in my city that I was now old enough to exploit. I kept finding links to the same boring places I always went to, and then my email announced, "You've got mail." I clicked it open and saw the heading for the message read, "Secret Bar." I wasn't sure if I had asked anyone for help. I didn't recognize the sender. I figured maybe I was in a chat room one night and asked around, but I decided it was worth a check. The email was simple and short and read something like, "Secret New York bar, looking for a drinker, not afraid of history, not too shy for eternity, then come visit us. Be in Washington Square Park tonight at 3 a.m. Wear a black shirt and jeans, and have a bottle of water in your hand. Seat yourself on the 5th bench. This is your only invitation. Miss it and you will never be invited again. P.S. Come alone and tell no one." And that was the end of the email. I was lucky that my job required me to wear a black shirt, so I did in fact have one. I pulled out a pair of old jeans and realized that I actually looked pretty good. I figured that this could be a prank. But even if it was, even if it turned out to be nothing, I would go out and have a few drinks anyway. Maybe even get a coffee. I didn't have to go into work the next day, so the night could turn out to be a very fun one anyway. However, I may have been a bored, idiotic 21-year-old, but I wasn't totally stupid. This could also be a trick, maybe even a trap. So I called my best friend, Adam. I told him that I was going out with some strangers from work, and that I wasn't sure about them. I told him that I would call him by around 5 a.m., and if I didn't, for him to call and check up on me. She returned my smile with one of her own. "Nope, always been Layla, and you must be Sam, right?" She knew my name. Very cool. Of course, my name was on my email profile, where the email was sent, so if this was her attempt at a cool trick, I was one step ahead. "Yes, Sam, that's me. I guess you're here to show me to the secret bar. I asked. Only if you're ready to drink to eternity or history, depending on your tastes. We'd like to consider this to be the first back-out point for new clients. You can decline the invitation now, go home, and maybe to some other bar or wherever you'd like. Only be warned that no other invitation will come to you again. I considered this, then decided that it was already after 3 a.m. I was already out, dressed, and full of water. I wanted to see this place. Lead on, Miss Layla, I replied. She stood up and began to walk ahead of me at a rapid pace. I might add, this way. She suddenly stopped and walked up the stoop to a private residence. She fiddled with keys, opened the door, and gestured for me to enter. Wait, is this someone's house? I asked.
I thought that was the coolest pitch for a bar that I had ever heard.
I figured that it was rehearsed, but she did kinda say this whole little phrase with a lot of conviction.
I had no idea who the silent one was, and I certainly didn't know about Forgotten Time, but I did have a desire to push on.
She walked me into the house, which was empty. No furniture, nothing at all. New York real estate isn't cheap, so if this place was renting a house just to serve as cover for a bar, they clearly took themselves seriously. This might not be so boring after all. What happened next was strange. She turned me towards a small hallway with an elevator. Now I know that some houses back in the day had elevators. However, this one only appeared to go down. New York isn't exactly known for having basements, especially in homes. As I went to step in, she stopped me once more. This is your second back-out chance. Same as before. You can turn around and leave. No harm, no foul. Push the button, I replied, pointing at the down button, then stepped in. This has to be a trick, I said. An illusion. We can't be this far down. Layla just grinned. You're right, she replied. We aren't 20 stories below the city. We are by now at least 200 stories below. If you're using stories as a measurement. I wanted to say something back about how that was a lie. It had to be a lie. We hadn't been riding that long, and that amount of depth wasn't possible on a tiny elevator like this. However, I figured that this was all part of the act. Like her whole speech about the House of the Silent One, and all that nonsense. I didn't want to become too obnoxious or pushy. She might end up asking me to leave. I figured that I would ruin the scene for other patrons. Instead, I just smiled and decided to play along with a really cool and elaborate bar scene. Fake or not, this was by far the most ambitious effort that I had ever seen put forward for a drinking establishment. Shortly after, the elevator stopped. Layla stepped out in front of the doors, but before she opened them, she turned back to me. This is your final chance to back out. If you wish, I will take you back. However, once I open these doors, you will be in eternity. You may find your way back to the surface tonight, but some find that leaving is just impossible. Some stay forever. In the interest of free will and fair play, I am bound by the council of the city to offer you this final chance to return to your life. Choose now. Amazing speech, Layla. Really great. You guys clearly put some thought into this. Yes, I want to go to this bar. And she smiled and opened the door. A small door sat at the end of a stone hallway that looked like it had been built around the time of the city's founding. There were no lights. I could only see by the small electric light in the elevator and the light coming from the door ahead. I walked forward, and as soon as I stepped off of the elevator, the cold hit me. It wasn't so cold that I couldn't take it, but if anyone has ever experienced being in a cellar on a really cold day with no heating, then you'll have an idea of how this felt. The air was thick beyond description. I instantly was covered in goosebumps, and I knew that if I stayed in this hallway for too long, I would pass out. I turned to look back, and I saw that the elevator had already begun heading back up. From what I could see, there was no button to call it back down either. I guess that Layla wasn't kidding when she said that this was my last chance to back out. I crossed my fingers that the bar would be heated, and I walked forward right there into the light. What happened over the next couple of hours is largely a blur, but I will tell the best that I can. I entered the bar. It was small, very small, about the size of a bedroom. There was a single wooden bar, 3 stools pushed to it, and 3 small tables in the corner area. The room was poorly lit. Only a small light bulb hanging from the cord was providing the light. However, it was well lit enough to see everything, and sitting right beneath the bulb seemed the most logical. There was a small shelf behind the bar, a typical setup, bottles in front of a mirror. There were 5 others in the room, plus the bartender. I saw a goth girl sitting at one of the tables, sketching with a rather plain-dressed man. There were 2 gentlemen at the other table. One was wearing a business suit, and the other was wearing that awful tourist attire that was popular in almost all walks of life, even secret bars. There was another woman, average in appearance, probably in her mid-30s, just staring at a small shard of a broken glass at the other side of the room. Of course there was me too, so that completed our little circle. There was no music playing. The walls were old stone, limestone maybe. The bartender, now he was a classic white shirt, black pants, suspenders, and bow tie, like something out of the 1920s. It was still cold, too. Not as bad as the hallway, but pretty awful. Staying here would only make me colder. But I was here now. I figured that I would test the waters. Now as for drinks, I saw no labels that I could recognize. None were labeled. There was no plaque either. No name brands. No cash register. No guide map. This place was as simple as you could want, and after a moment, the bartender spoke to me. "Welcome to eternity," he announced, smiling. Cool name. Sort of expected it though. I tried not to sound rude or pretentious. They had put on a great show tonight, but calling the place eternity, really too predictable. Well, it translates differently in lots of places. Eternity is just the way that you know it. Shall I call it something else? He asked, and he didn't seem to be joking or annoyed. No, eternity's fine. How about a drink?
Moo. The New York special, please, I said. No New York special here, and no tours either. What do you have then? Well, most people down here have a drink that we call regret. I can also show you loneliness, or if you're feeling particularly bold, our house special is damnation. Wow. You guys really play up the eternity thing here, huh? Okay, show me some regret, please. He handed me a small bronze hand from a brown box, and it felt ancient too. I figured it to be from a statue, and I wished that I had some knowledge to mix with it. Apparently there was no information here, and I chuckled. Of course not. The knowledge in eternity, what was I thinking?
The hand was compelling enough though, and the feeling hit me quick. I ordered up a loneliness, and began to look around at my fellow patrons. None of them seemed to even notice me. The goth girl was cute though, so I picked up my hand and I decided to walk on over to her, when suddenly, the woman sitting at the bar began to whimper. "I am so lost. Can I please have some direction?" She seemed to be pleading this to the bartender. "No, ma'am," he replied with the same stupid grin. "No direction in eternity, not even a small amount. Have another look at that shard though. Wash it down with some history." "No more history. My mind is too full. No more looking. Direction, please," continued. And to me, it began to sound a lot like begging. Instead of handing her direction, he held out an unlit candle, and it was then that I noticed the overflowing hourglass, the size of a wretched punch bowl, sitting next to her. It was full of sand. Had she watched it all herself? I strained my eyes, and I studied her harder. Her eyes were bloodshot badly. She had been at it for a while. The bartender patiently held out the candle, grin never leaving his face until she finally sighed and took it. He produced a match, and she took a light. She began to cough violently, gagging too, and I decided to chime in. "Hey man, she doesn't look so hot, and I really don't think that she needs another moment. She looks like she's lost too. Call the elevator man. She's had enough, I think." The bartender turned his smile on me. "You old Jane here." "Nah, Jane is a trooper, man. Looks at a couple of artifacts a day, and as far as being lost, well, she knew this place was a lost sort of dive before she walked into the door, but she wanted to be here. She's getting exactly what she wanted." I walked over to Jane and placed my hand on her shoulder. "Ma'am, if you want to get out of here, I'll walk you over to the elevator. You don't look so great right now." I tried to sound as concerned as a 21-year-old could sound. Jane looked at me and smiled. "Oh, I'm fine, just fine," she said, but her mouth quivered as she spoke. The bartender was watching us like a hawk, still smiling, but his smile no longer looked so friendly. "Everything okay?" he asked, beaming like a used car salesman, and Jane shakily replied, "Yes." The bartender turned around, and at that second, Jane gripped my arm, holding me into the sorrow that was her breath, and whispered, "Leave while you can," so low that I almost missed it. Her breath was like a dusty tomb. She must have been lost for days. I was confused, but not nearly as sorrowful as this woman seemed to be.
I walked over to the man in the business suit, and he at least appeared sane. "Hey sir, I think that lady over there needs some help."
The man looked at me and laughed.
"We all need help, kid. We're in eternity after all," he shouted, and as he did this, I looked over at the goth girl just in time to see her begin to draw dark symbols on her arm with a sharp object, deep and hard from the looks of it.
He just kept going at it. "Hey, stop that. Look what you're doing to yourselves," I screamed at them, and they looked at me, and I noticed that the girl was crying, but also smiling. Her eyes were practically begging for her self-inflicted pain to stop, yet she kept at it. I had seen enough. The bartender dragged me back to my stool, and with great speed, was somehow back behind the bar again. "Now you wanted secrets, right, Sam? You were bored and wanted more. That's what you came for. Now look at your drink before I break your neck." Through all of this, he never stopped smiling. He slammed an object before me. A murky drink was inside, and he grabbed my arm and began to squeeze, the pain becoming unbearable. My mind began to race. This was no bar. This was something else entirely. I wasn't ready to believe that I was actually in eternity, but I knew that I was somewhere bad. "Look at your drink, sir," he screamed again, and fearing that I would pass out from the pain, I slammed down the object in front of me. It felt horrible. I couldn't describe it then, but I can now. But it was fierce. And then he let go of me, and suddenly the room got much colder. The light began to flicker, and suddenly I was afflicted by knowledge, things that I didn't want to know, things that no one would want to know. All these years, I just thought that he died naturally, a secret about my birth that my mother had kept hidden. I was going to die alone. Those were just a few of the secrets that suddenly hit me. There were thousands, maybe millions, more, but by then my mind couldn't process them all. There were some things about me, things about people that I knew, that were so dark that I am thankful that I cannot remember them, because to dwell on them for even a second longer would have brought on madness. Frantically, I looked around the bar. The woman, Jane, was still staring. Only her soul was on fire, a small red glow smoldering right in the middle of her chest. She was clearly in the worst pain of her existence, but she continued to stare at the shard after shard of her pottery. Each time that she did, the glow on her chest would get brighter. I looked straight ahead in the mirror behind the bar, seeing the gruesome scene that had begun behind me. However, what took my attention was the small black figure standing directly to my right. It was maybe 5 feet tall. Its skin was jet black. The only thing that stood out was its eyes. They were human eyes, but bright, not glowing, just bright enough to stand out from the onyx of its face. It had small horns on its head, and it had very white, very sharp teeth, and somehow I knew this was the Silent One, and I was in his house.
I looked towards the door,
But it was gone, and the cold continued to get worse. The secrets were still popping in my mind, each worse than the one before. Entire dimensions of my soul were being revealed to me, all of it horrible. And just then, my cell phone rang. The ringtone, something from my world, something from above. It grabbed my attention, and in that moment, the secret slowed down a bit, and I looked down, and it was 5 a.m. Adam. Adam was calling to check up on me. His name, Adam. Yes, I have a friend named Adam. My best friend. The more I focused on things that were real, the more stable things became around me. The secrets were almost stopping now. The macabre scene around me was slowing down too. Jane was back to just staring again. The goth girl wasn't drawing, and the sinister face of the Silent One, it had also retreated just for a bit. Adam, my oldest friend. Yes, we grew up together. We rode bikes together. We had sleepovers, pizza parties, and the more that I focused on the real world, if I could just, the door was back, and I bolted for it. "Stop, you had your chance to back out," screamed the bartender, and I looked back just in time to see him leap over the bar behind me. I shot through the door and back into the tiny, impossibly cold hallway. The bartender burst through the door, and I did the only thing that I could think of. If thinking about the real world weakened this place, then perhaps a real link to the real world would break it. I hit answer on my cell phone, and the voice of my best friend, who was calling me from the safety of his apartment, greeted my ears. I could even hear music in the background. Real music. "Adam, call the police. I'm in real trouble here." I screamed into the phone. "What? I could barely hear you, man. Your connection sucks," he answered. The bartender was still coming, still grinning. I had one last idea. I pushed speaker, and Adam's voice, a product of the real world, owned by someone who had not made a deal to enter some level of eternity, flooded the hallway. The bartender stopped. He is not allowed to know of this place, to have any contact with anyone being invited, even voice contact. It violates the council of the city, and that was when the final blow to the bar from eternity was delivered. I heard Adam, in his sleepy yet concerned voice, say, "What's the council of the city?" Contact had been made. Whatever rules governed this place had been broken, and suddenly the elevator came down. The bartender, still smiling, looked down at me. "Sorry, sir, but you have violated the rules. You are no longer welcome at this bar. Now please, leave." Layla was standing in the elevator, and I stood up and climbed in. The effects of the drink that I consumed were gone. No more secrets, and my phone had died. I guess calling from eternity drains a battery. However, the effects were enough, and we rode up in silence. When we reached the surface, Layla walked me out of the house and onto the stoop, and then she spoke. "You may think that you won tonight, but you didn't. You had a chance to ride this elevator, up as well as down. Your heart wants secrets instead of happiness, though. So it went down. You could have gone up, and everything you could ever possibly desired would have been yours. So go on, feel proud. We like proud mortals, because the proud ones always find their way back to eternity." "To hell with you, Layla," I replied, but did so as I was walking away. I didn't want to tempt those people any more than I had, and when I got home that night, I remembered almost all of the secrets, and over the years they have slipped away. Slowly at first. Then like a dream, I would wake up, and more would be lost. I wrote down the ones that I listed here, because I didn't want to forget them all. However, when I read them now, they don't seem like secrets anymore, just like weird lies. Of course, I called the police that very next day. I wanted to help the people down there. I had to dress up the story a bit. I told the cops that I was led there by Layla after meeting her in the village. I left out the part about the place possibly being a level of eternity and simply described it as a basement where people were being held against their will. The cops got a warrant and they went in. The house was empty, as I said it was. However, there was no elevator found. The cops said that there was a large closet area that appears to have been an old dumbwaiter at one time, but it was long gone now. The house itself was still on the market. It had no owner, and for a few years I would go down to Washington Square Park around 3 a.m. hoping to catch Layla luring another victim into the house. However, I never saw her again, and years went on. And I did marry, and no, my partner was never killed in a plane accident. We don't have kids yet though. Perhaps when I violated the contract, the council of the city, or whatever, I somehow broke that cycle. I'll never know, but I will be careful. After I posted this, I burned the list of secrets that I had written down. Of course I could always read them on here, but I won't. In time, hopefully, I'll forget them too. I never confronted my mother about the secret about my birth, or asked who my real dad was. Those secrets seemed so real, but Satan is also called the father of lies, for a reason. I'm not sure if the Silent One is Satan or just a lesser version of him, but I doubt that the Silent One is a very honest sort either, and so I post this with a warning to be careful when seeking out secrets. Some things are kept secret for a reason, and to know them is to know madness.